Hi, my name is Greg Horn. Welcome to Hope is Here. Today we are continuing our conversation with Michelle Chudy, and she's the author of 3 books, and her 3rd book has just come out here this week, actually, and it is called Song of the Barren, and it's Miscarriages to Miracles, and the whole desire of Michelle's heart in this book is just to give the gift of hope to women and families that have been through the devastating loss of a miscarriage, and obviously it affects women, but it also affects men. And one of the things I love about this book, and we talked about it in our first program of this week, and if you missed that, I want to encourage you to go to our website, hopeishere.today. That is hopeishere.today, because one of the things that Michelle's done, she also has got personal stories of other pregnancy loss survivors, including men that have had to go through that along with their wives, and it affects everybody, not just the women that have that. So I want to encourage you to go back and listen to our conversation yesterday, and you can find that at hopeishere.today. One of the things that we got to just touch on a little bit in our first program, Michelle, is just about all the emotions that goes through a woman's heart, and just she experiences that. And I think sometimes as a follower of Jesus, no matter what the situation is, if it's something painful, especially like a miscarriage, that sometimes we feel like maybe we're not a good Christian if we have anger or bitterness. Did you find that to be true?
I think so too, and I think that you mix in the pregnancy hormones along with that end up, regulating as a result, makes the matters even more compound, for lack of a better word. But it's hard, and I think that you're expected to maintain the Christian faith too. And if you have any type of anger, or if you stay in your sorrow for too long, people start to wonder what's wrong with you. They expect the joy of Jesus to be with you all the time, and forget that there's emotions that come with the body.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I've found I was in full-time ministry for almost 14 years, and one of the things that so many times when I would talk to somebody about something painful in their life, Michelle, and they would start to apologize when they would become emotional, start to tear up, men and women. And I always remember something my brother told me when I went through a divorce, and he's an oncologist, and he called and checked on me every day for that first month. He was unbelievable. And one day I started to get a little emotional on the phone, and it'd been about 3 weeks by then, so I'm thinking I should be strong by now, and I started to become a little emotional on the phone and tear up, and my voice cracking, and I apologized to him. And he said, "Greg, I want to tell you something I always have to tell my patients when, unfortunately, they do have cancer, and I have to tell them that first time." And I start to talk with them, and they usually do become emotional, and they apologize. I said, "I'm sorry, Dr. Horn." And he said, "I'm going to tell you the same thing that I share with them." I say, I'd be a little more concerned if you didn't have those emotions with what you've been through. So I would say, is that probably appropriate for women that have gone through a miscarriage or with a supporting husband, that it's okay to have those emotions of anger and bitterness?
Oh, most definitely. And I would say that if you didn't, just like your brother said, I would be concerned. I think that just the example that Jesus gave when he was literally wearing a flesh suit, of how he grieved. I mean, he emoted and expressed pain in various shapes and sizes. So to go through that type of loss, to not be able to express those emotions, it's debilitating. And not being allowed to express that is debilitating. And even, the husband, the siblings. My daughter, who wrote a letter from her perspective, is in here. She wrote it when she was 15. And even reading the book, I have the proof back of the print copy. She's reading it, and she still cries. I'm proofing my book, getting it ready to be released, and I still weep because it still hurts. There's a part of me that died, and even though they're still alive in heaven, but that pain is still there. So most definitely, those emotions are there, and the anger is normal too, because there's a lot of things that you don't understand, and it's very easy to get angry at God during the process too, and that's where I think most Christians get scared, when they get angry with the Lord and they don't know how to deal with that.
You've got a chapter in the book, chapter 5, says it's called The Place Between. Talk a little bit about that, please.
The place between, oh gosh. that is a depiction of the barrenness of where you are from the actual experience to where you're in a place of hopelessness. And I found myself there for a couple of years, and it's scary because you go flat, you lose hope. I stopped praying for, basically I stopped praying. I prayed, but it wasn't like the depth of prayer that I was used to. The relationship that I had with the Lord had dried up as well because I was mad at him. And it was a land that where you're not even waiting, you're just living.
Well, you just said something. I had another guest a few weeks ago say this, that they got angry with God, and I kind of joked with them. I said, "Why?" And I interrupted. I said, "Wow, and you're still here?" And they kind of looked at me. Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? Lightning didn't strike me. Don't you feel that maybe sometimes people as followers of Jesus, they feel like, even though God wants an authentic relationship with us, and that's why he sent Jesus, that if we get angry at God and if we tell him that like we're going to get struck dead by lightning?
I think that's funny because, I've actually thought that. I grew up in a very fearful relationship of God because that was how I was raised in the church that I met him. But it was a misinterpretation of the relationship with him. And I even wrote about that, and I think it's in chapter 1 about the shattered heart, where for the first time in my life, I yelled at him. And it's like, and then of course, immediately asked, forgiveness, but that frustration of being in between of where I had miscarried and had to wait for the D&C and people telling me I didn't have faith and, waiting for the Lord to bring the baby back to life. I mean, all these things were coming at me, and I was so frustrated that I yelled at him. It's like, you're the giver of life and that you just make things happen. But yeah, it's like when you get to that place where you're so angry and you don't understand, the Lord wants you to bring that to him. I mean, that's a precious offering to bring that type of relationship to him and lay it at his feet. It's not like you're disrespecting him. He wants you to ask him questions. I'm going through Beth Moore's The Quest right now, which is a Bible study, and it's all about asking him questions. And she's showing how, people, even the ones that question the Lord, none of them were basically charred by lightning or anything else for that sake. So,
okay. Well, as you've been sharing all this, what have you learned about God? What did you learn about God of going through the unfortunate process of suffering the miscarriages? But talk a little bit about what did you learn about God? How did it change your relationship with him?
It changed my relationship by being fervent with him to where I went cold for a while. And then I was just basically maintaining, just trying to stand. And what I learned about my Jesus through all of this is that he's extremely patient and that his love never fades, that he never forsook me during that process, and his word is true. Even though there were times that I didn't understand, that Vacation Bible School song that talks about the peace that passes understanding? When I used to sing that, I never understood those words as a kid, but I realized what that meant, that there was going to be times that I didn't understand, that his peace was there, that the Holy Spirit, the promise that he was given to us when Jesus ascended, that he's real, and I can rely on him to comfort me. So he was made tangible to me in so many different ways.
Well, in our program tomorrow, we're going to talk about the miracle that Michelle and her husband Mark were able to experience. But Michelle, if there's somebody listening and they've just been through a miscarriage, and they're just trying to process all these different emotions and the physical effects, the psychological effects, what would you want to say to that precious woman?
I would just tell them that they are loved, that they're not alone, that what they're feeling is very real, and not to discount it, and to take the time to weep, take the time to mourn, that it's part of the process of going through the valley of Baca, that, you literally have to go through it, and those tears are healing. The Lord made us to function the way that the body's supposed to. They're a cleansing mechanism. And I'd also recommend that they take the time to write, to journal during the time, because for one, it helps to release, but it also leaves basically a marker and something to hang on to, because a lot of the times when people are going through miscarriage, there's no one to bury. There's not closure there, and it helps to work through that part of the miscarrying.
Just tuned in, we're talking with Michelle Chudy, and she is the author of 3 books. Her third book just coming out this month. It's called The Song of the Barren, Miscarriages to Miracles. And Michelle has released this book because her desire is to give the gift of hope to women and families, husbands, dads that have gone through the just traumatic experience of a miscarriage or having a stillborn baby. And so, Michelle, just the to me arching question that I want to ask you, why is it you think that our society really just hasn't given permission, so to speak, to talk more about miscarriages?
I've actually pondered that quite a bit when I started putting pen to paper writing this book, Greg, because one, that you would think that the death of anything would be something that would be honored. And I think that culture has created a situation where life has been discounted. There is the argument of, when is life conceived? Is it a fetus? Is it a baby? So that whole argument in society, and then abortion mixed in. And I really think that there's just a state of society that has devalued life and the ability to express it and even to mourn it. So that is what I see in my personal and professional opinion, that we as a society have created a tough culture in order to deal with miscarriage because of how we even define life.
All right. On the other side of, if you're the husband or you're the close friend of somebody and you've not experienced miscarriage, but, your loved one that does happen or your close friend that happens to, what do women need from people when they've gone through the miscarriage? What type of support? What's the best things to say and maybe even 1 or 2 things not to say?
Great questions. I will tell you that one of the things that meant the most to me is the acknowledgement of the grief, and that it was recognized as a loss. I had friends that brought me meals that basically acknowledged, and then on the flip side, I had people that didn't say anything and ignored me and wanted me just to move on. So for those that supported me and basically acknowledged what I went through was real, they gave me space. They let me know that that they were there for me when I needed them. They weren't in my face. They knew that it was a very sensitive subject. So they basically came and expressed their desire to support me, and then they would reach out and they left the ball in my court as far as whether or not I wanted to engage and or disengage. And as a friend that's trying to support, what not to say, just be tender about the situation as far as like when you actually are bringing things up, because of course being very tender to the topic, that it can release a floodgate. I had a girlfriend that came up to me at work and was talking to me months after about the miscarriages, and we're in the hallway in a building of 16,000 people of our home office where I worked. And I had to leave. I had to break away from the conversation because it touched such a painful area that I couldn't stand there and stay in conversation.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our time today, but please stay with us and tune in tomorrow as we've talked a lot about the grieving process and the pain, but we're going to talk about the excitement of the miracle that happened in Michelle's life tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow, 12:45 p.m. for Hope is Here.
CMI is your full-service human resources provider in Central Kentucky. For 15 years, CMI Human Resources has taken great pride in helping organizations and people work. Whether it's employee handbooks or help in filling a position, no job is too large or too small for CMI. Contact the professionals today at CMI Human Resources, 859-296-2800, or online at cmiconsulting.com.